We at the Canisius Ambassadors for Conservation feel that one of the most important messages we can deliver is that we all have to be much more careful about what we pour down our drains. Not too long ago, I spotted one of my neighbors working on his car in the driveway. I went over to say hello. He's a really good guy and a great mechanic, and I'm always interested in hearing about the recent improvements and changes he's made to his car. This time, he was telling me how he had just changed his oil. He was bragging about the special grade that he used and how much money he saved by doing it himself. I looked around at his equipment and I asked, just out of curiosity, what did you do with the old oil? And he told me, without any embarrassment and without any special emphasis, that he had poured it into the storm runoff drain in front of his house. Now, he's my friend and I didn't want him to feel bad, but when I heard this, I really felt terrible. I felt terrible because I know that these kinds of things happen all over the nation all the time, and also because I know what happens to the oil once it goes down a drain like this. It doesn't just disappear, though it does seem like that. It doesn't just seep harmlessly into the ground. Storm drains that carry rainwater off our streets empty out into our creeks and rivers. Just think about it. Of course they do. It's just that when we live in cities and in suburbs, we sometimes lose connection with that fact. When humans build communities, they temporarily divert water via storm drains. But those drains only carry the water for short distances to locations where they pour out into nearby streams. So what does this mean? Well, let's put this plainly. The next time it rains, my friend's oil will be pushed along by the rainwater to the nearest stream. My friend is a good guy. He would never intentionally walk over to a stream and pour dirty oil into it, but without knowing it, that's exactly what he did. The same thing applies to household sanitary drains. I remember one time when I was little, being at my uncle's house and seeing him pour some leftover paint thinner down the drains of the utility tub in his basement. In my uncle's case, once it was down the drain, it was out of sight, out of mind. But we should all know better. In this case, the paint thinner flowed through the sanitary systems, downhill under the city's streets, to the city's wastewater treatment plants. America's water treatment plants are very good at taking a lot of elements out of our sewage, but when it comes to pollutants like that, the technology is pretty limited. There's a saying in the conservation business that all drains lead to the ocean. This is to remind us that if we care about the health of our oceans and the health of all the wonderful life living there, that we should be much more careful about what we pour down our drains. Consider just this one example. I'm filming this video at Canisius College, which is located in Buffalo, New York. Any pollutant that we put in our drains here flows to our city's water treatment plant on the banks of the beautiful Niagara River. From there, it flows downstream to Lake Ontario and eventually out through the St. Lawrence River to the Atlantic Ocean. And here, right here, directly downstream from us, is a population of beluga whales. The whales in this area depend upon fish, which depend upon invertebrates and plants that take their nutrients from the water and sediments that flow from us downstream to this gulf. The terrible thing is that scientists have shown that many of the whales in this area have accumulated high levels of chemical pollutants in their bodies. And these pollutants did not originate in the Gulf. They flowed downstream from the American and Canadian cities that flank the Great Lakes. In the past, we used to point to industry as the main source of pollutants, and that was a big problem until fairly recently. But government and industry regulations are now pretty strict, and many industries are moving in a much more environmentally conscious direction. The bottom line is, it's time to stop pointing to others as polluters. It's time for each of us to examine our own behavior in this regard. We each have to ask, and let's be honest with ourselves, how many chemical pollutants did we release into the environment last year, last week, or even today? If you live like most Americans, you and your family probably have not been ideal citizens of the earth in this regard. It seems like what I do, what my family does, what my neighbors do, is only a small part of a much bigger problem. I'm sure my uncle thought he was only dumping a little bit of paint thinner. My neighbor thought that the little bit of oil he added to the waterways wouldn't be a problem. But there are millions of us. So even if we each only pour a small amount of oil or a tiny bit of paint thinner, it adds up to tons of toxic chemicals flowing through our waterways. We don't even need to point to whales or other ocean life to worry about this. These are our waterways too. Right now I'm standing in Smokes Creek as it flows through the suburb of Orchard Park, New York. It's a lovely little stream typical of so many in North America. As it flows, it joins with other tributaries and makes for a nice little creek that goes all the way through the southern part of the city of Buffalo. And right here, it flows into the waters of Lake Erie. This point is only about 15 miles from the lovely suburban scene of Smokes Creek. But by the time the water gets here, the water is so polluted that officials have to keep this beautiful beach closed from public use. Now you want to know something even worse than that? That red round brick building in the distance, that's the water intake for the drinking water of the city of Buffalo. It's a pretty clear straight line. If we are careless about things like pesticides, oil, and paint thinner, they end up washing downstream, right to the water supply that we ourselves drink. So this is an easy one. Clean water is good for all of us. It's good for local wildlife. It's good for marine wildlife way downstream. Equally important, it's good for us as humans who depend on water, and it's critically important for our long-term health. So what should we do? Two things. First, we need to reduce the amount of pesticides and toxic chemicals that are in use. These are all fine products. We at conservenature.org are not anti-chemical. However, we could all stand to use less. If I use less of these products and you use less of these products, our shared waterways will be cleaner. It's that simple. Second, if you do use pesticides and other toxic chemicals, please be very careful about how you dispose of them. For motor oil, this is pretty easy. All you have to do is take your used oil in a bottle to an auto repair shop. They have special receptacles here where they process the oil for recycling. For other toxic chemicals, it's a little less easy. Nevertheless, there's a right way and a wrong way. Whatever you do, please don't just put these things in the garbage or pour them down the drain. That's simply releasing a dose of poison into the environment, and it's the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do is dispose of them at specific toxin collection sites. Nowadays, nearly all cities and towns have periodic events where people can drop off pesticides and other toxins. It's certainly less convenient than using the regular garbage, but you come away having the satisfaction of knowing that you did your part in keeping our waterways clean. If you want to do more, consider volunteering to help out at one of these chemical collection events, or help advertise them in your own community so that more and more people participate in them. The bottom line here is that common, ordinary citizens can be sources of pollution, and that it's the responsibility of all of us as individuals to put a stop to that. At the Canisius Ambassadors for Conservation, we believe that if we all act together, we can make the world a better place. We really can.